Okay, if you don't want me to answer the question, I'll move on to someone else. You're a tax-funded mouthpiece to the PMO. That's the reality.
Wow, shot down.
Welcome back to Northern Perspective, everyone. I'm Cypher.
And I'm Fox. We know we're going to have to dig into this in much more detail on our live stream later tonight. But with the news that exploded today about this, we knew we had to do a video about it as an appetizer for all of you. In short, the ArriveCAN scandal has just exploded.
Let's take a look. So the Globe and Mail dropped an article today entitled Auditor General's ArriveCAN Report Finds Glaring Disregard for Basic Management. Auditor General Karen Hogan's report into federal spending on the ArriveCAN app found a, quote, glaring disregard for basic management, end quote, and concluded that IT staffing firm GC Strategies was directly involved in setting narrow terms for a $25 million contract that it ultimately won. What does that mean? It means that it's not just that GC Strategies bid on the contract. They were involved in actually creating what the contract would look like that they would ultimately bid on, which would have served to allow them and only them to win the contract. This is nuts, folks. This is absolutely nuts, but it also confirms all of the suspicion and speculation that we had about the relationship between Christian Firth, GC Strategies, Dalian, Cordex, and also Cameron McDonald and Tony Utano. Now, that's just the tip of the iceberg. This goes further than that, and we've seen indications that it does. But this is just the start, folks.
Well, and it's not uncommon for there to be some negotiation between two parties regarding a contract. You know, vendor A might send it to vendor B, and vendor B might say, well, I don't like this clause. Can we amend it? And they kind of work back and forth. But this sounds like GC Strategies was directly involved in the creation of the contract. Right.
And it's not even like it's the RFP. This is even prior to the contract, right? This is the problem, because what the government was supposed to do here is create a request for proposal that they were asking and soliciting bids from different companies to do. And then they put in their requirements that they need. And then the companies are supposed to try and fulfill those requirements. Pretty straightforward. But when you have a vendor that's involved in that process, in putting the criteria into the RFP so that only they can win it, that is no bueno. You're not allowed to do that, especially in the government.
Not at all.
So what really brought this to our attention? We did see the Globe and Mail article, but Pierre Poilievre took this as so important that he decided to step out and say something about it.
After 8 years, Justin Trudeau is not worth the cost and not worth the corruption. After 8 years, Justin Trudeau has doubled housing costs. He's doubled the rent, doubled mortgage payments, doubled the needed down payment for the average home. After 8 years of Trudeau, you now have to save 25 years for a down payment on a home in Toronto, when you used to be able to pay off an entire mortgage in that time. After 8 years, young women wonder if they'll ever be able to have kids because they're stuck in their parents' basements until their early 40s, when under the previous government, the average age of buying a home was 29. After 8 years of Justin Trudeau, criminal defense lawyers tell us that their convict clients are asking to stay in jail so they don't have to go out and find a place to rent, because prison is better than Justin Trudeau's housing market. After 8 years of Trudeau, a record-smashing 2 million people line up at food banks every single month in scenes that are reminiscent of the Great Depression. After 8 years of Trudeau, there are now 30 homeless encampments in Halifax alone. Some scenes that were unimaginable only 8 years ago. After 8 years of Trudeau, violent crime has exploded by 40% at least, and growing quickly. We see a record-smashing increase in extortions and other serious crimes. And after 8 years of Justin Trudeau, while you can't pay your bills, where you can't afford a home, he's taken $60 million of your tax dollars and given it to a corrupt app, ArriveSCAM, that doesn't work, that we didn't need, and that went 750 times over budget. Think of that the next time you go to the grocery store and you look at the cost of the food and that bill is too high for you to pay. Think of it the next time you look at his carbon tax, which he's quadrupling, on your heating bill, and you wonder if you'll be able to keep the heat on for the rest of the winter. He took $60 million of your dollars and put it into this ArriveSCAM. Think of that. When you see homeless people who can't afford a place to live, that Justin Trudeau took their money for this ArriveSCAM app. Common sense conservatives told him not to do ArriveSCAM, but he went ahead anyway. What were the results of that decision? Well, we now know the results. ArriveSCAM costs at least $60 million, 750 times over budget. $12 million could be unrelated to ArriveCAN altogether, even though it was paid out for that purpose. Money given to GC Strategies, we were told it was $9 million, then it became $13 million, and now they say it was $19 million. 18% of the invoices were submitted by contractors who lacked information to determine if expenses were related to ArriveCAN. GC Strategists were involved in writing the requirements for the very contract that they would win and profit from. Initial documentation leading to GC Strategies' first $2.3 million contract is missing. Average per diem costs, this is per person per day, were $1,900, far higher than the normal and still exorbitant $675 per person per day the Trudeau government normally throws out the window. 10,000 travelers were wrongly quarantined by Trudeau's ArriveSCAM app. Single mothers who couldn't go to work because they got notice that they had to be quarantined. They weren't able to pay for their children's food because their wage was canceled by an app that locked them in their home, unable to work, and wrongly and unjustifiably so. No evidence to show CBSA employees complied with the code of conduct. In fact, they were invited to whiskey tasting and other luxurious treats from the very contractors that they were paying your money to. And page 18, subcontractors did not have the property security clearances, so Trudeau put your private information at risk. While Trudeau says he doesn't have enough money to scan those shipping containers that are taking your car that's been stolen and sending it off to the rest of the world, the very same department that is responsible for our borders and our ports took $60 million or more for the ArriveSCAM. More proof that after 8 years, Trudeau is not worth the cost, he's not worth the crime, he's not worth the corruption. That's why we need a common sense conservative government that will slash the waste and end the corruption, that will respect your tax dollars. We will cap spending and cut waste to balance the budget and bring down inflation and interest rates. We will axe the carbon tax to lower your food, gas, and heating bills. We will lower income tax so hard work pays off again. We'll clear away the bureaucracy and taxes to build more homes. We'll bring jail and not bail for repeat violent offenders. And we will secure our borders, including our ports, to keep the drug dealers and smugglers from bringing drugs in and car thieves from taking your vehicles out. We will restore the common sense of the common people, united for our common home, with a clear agenda to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, stop the crime, axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, stop the crime. It's common sense. Let's bring it home.
Holy crap. All right, so there was a lot said there. We didn't want to interrupt that so you could get the whole message. So the first part of his speech, he didn't talk anything to do with ArriveCAN. Why was that? That's because he is trying to remind everybody all of the other pieces that Justin Trudeau has failed you on.
Well, and not only that, but we just learned today that ArriveCAN cost more than initially believed. So he's also trying to remind us, you know, all that bad stuff that's going on in your life, how you can't make rent, how you have trouble affording groceries, how gas and heating are too expensive. Yeah, all that money that they're taking from you in taxes, they gave to this app.
Right. And he's trying to relate all of this back to your hard-earned dollar. That's the whole point of what he was talking about in that first part of the speech, reminding everyone that these are your dollars. And here's all of the impacts of the Trudeau government and what they've had on the average Canadian taxpayer. And it's unacceptable. So the second piece. So we've already talked about the contract fixing. So that's a big problem. And he said some other things in there. So the report found that there was $12 million that was spent or allocated to ArriveCAN that had absolutely nothing to do with ArriveCAN. That's a problem. That's potential contract fraud, everybody. That's not legal. And there's also a substantial amount of the funds that are allocated to expenses that they don't seem to be related to ArriveCAN either.
Yeah, I think the thing that shocked me the most out of what Pierre just said was the per diem rate was over $1,000 and that the regular rate is $600.
Well, I believe he said $1,900 a day.
It was huge per day per person. Now, I had a friend who he's employed in the States, lives in the States, but he would go from location to location because he was a specialist in what he did. And his per diem rate was $50 US for food. The company would book his hotel rooms, and obviously they would try to get the cheapest hotel rooms that they could, but they'd give him $50 a day for food, and that was it. And anything above and beyond that was coming out of his salary. And so why would you need to give somebody $600 per day minimum, but on ArriveCAN they were getting over $1,000 per day?
So just to break this down, so that's $675. That's an average of $84 an hour. Okay. And that $1,900 that he's talking about, that's over $237 an hour. That's disgusting. And yet you have the Liberals say there and say that, well, we got value. Excuse me. Just because something ends up being cheaper than the way it was before doesn't mean you got value. It's how much should this have cost? A lot frickin' less. That's for damn sure. That's for damn sure. Now, this doesn't end here, because now the media gets to ask their questions. And it's curious because just as Pierre comes out and this news has exploded, you get the Canadian press who asks one of the first questions. And you would think that the question should be related to the news that has exploded out of the Globe and Mail and at committee this morning.
One would think.
One would think.
Why did your party want to grant over $100 million in regulatory relief to the mainstream media?
We don't want to give any tax dollars to the mainstream media. Our belief is that the mainstream media and all...
Decision, then? Your party's decision to grant regulatory relief?
So I'll answer your question. The media that is bought and paid for, where are you from, by the way? Which outlet are you in? Which outlet? Which outlet?
Canadian Press.
Ah, okay, Canadian Press. So you're talking about tax dollars for media. Isn't CBC your biggest? Isn't no? I can answer.
I asked regulatory.
Yeah, and you want to answer?
Why does your party want to grant $100 million in regulatory relief to the mainstream media?
When would you like me to respond?
Cheeky, I love it.
Well, and this is it. So you have the government talking about $60 million wasted on this stupid app. And corruption. Blatant corruption. Criminal offenses. And your question is, why did your party allow, what are you even talking about? Why did your party allow $100 million? You don't even make sense, Canadian Press. The Conservatives don't allow anything in this government. It's the Trudeau and the NDP that allow us. These are the parties that vote for this crap.
Yeah, and I don't think the Canadian press understands how Parliament works. I mean, the Conservatives are always going to be outvoted. Even if the Bloc votes with them, the NDP and the Liberals are going to vote against what the Conservatives are saying, always.
But the funny thing is this reporter is actually proving Pierre's point. So they ask a question, he's trying to answer it, and then they're constantly interrupting him. Well, let me answer the question. But she doesn't like the answer. So she keeps interrupting. It's like, no, this is the problem. You are actually trying to control the narrative and control my answer, but you're not even affording me the respect of actually trying to answer your question. And this is the great thing about Pierre, is he doesn't get pushed around by reporters. I don't know when they're going to actually learn this, because they keep trying to do it and they keep failing miserably.
Because, you know, you get some headstrong reporter that's going to be like, I'm going to be the one that's going to take down Pierre Poilievre. Yeah. And they fail utterly and miserably.
Every time.
Okay, good. Okay, great. So, of course, you are a tax-funded media outlet and spreading Justin Trudeau's message.
Why did you
and so you're interrupting me again. You're interrupting me again. I am answering the question.
Do you regret granting $100 million in regulatory relief to the mainstream media, including
Your question is
Bell?
false. So if you can allow me to correct your falsehoods, then we can answer the question directly. So, false. Canadian Conservatives do not believe in giving tax dollars to media outlets. That's Justin Trudeau. That's Justin Trudeau. That's Justin Trudeau. Okay, if you don't want me to answer the question, I'll move on to someone else. You're a tax-funded mouthpiece to the PMO. That's the reality.
Wow, shot down.
Yeah, like, sorry, don't. You may not like truth bombs, but they're falling at a rapid rate out of Pierre's mouth right now. And it's, you know, it's not like we're being a fanboy and fangirl here. This is just reality, folks. The question should be, why the hell aren't you asking questions about this ArriveCAN scandal? Oh, wait. Maybe it's because that you're more interested in being a mouthpiece for the Liberals to try and attack the Conservatives.
Well, that's it. If these journalists were out for the truth, they wouldn't be asking questions about things that are not currently relevant. They would be asking about what the press conference is about, the ArriveCAN report.
Which is a big deal, folks.
It's huge.
And here's the thing. The Conservatives know this is a big deal to Canadians because they keep referencing it. And the Liberals know this is a big deal to Canadians because they keep referencing it inside committee, right? You hear them constantly saying, well, you know, for the Canadians watching, they know damn well that tens of thousands of Canadians, hundreds of thousands of Canadians are watching. And they know it is so important because it is an indictment on this entire government and how they operate and how they allow this corruption to operate under their noses and in some cases even encourage it.
So,
question answered. You committed.
I'm trying to.
Answer the question.
I'm trying to, but you're heckling. Are you going to let me answer the question, or are you just going to heckle on behalf of Justin Trudeau? Which is it?
I would love the answer.
Great.
You know, even when he's talking down to reporters, he's so charming.
Yeah, and he's not mad, right? He handles this extremely calmly, and that's the key to all this. Because he's not getting riled up, and he's not providing them with any kind of gotcha clips that they could use later. It's so calm, and he just completely dismantles them. And you hear the reporter getting riled up, but he's just like, listen, do you want me to answer this or not? Or are you going to continue to be Trudeau's mouthpiece? Right? And it's a masterclass on how you handle aggressive reporters.
So our party does not support tax dollars for media outlets, because that's when we end up with biased media like you, who come here and articulate the PMO talking points rather than delivering real news to the Canadian people. Justin Trudeau gave Bell Media and other media tax dollars supposedly to protect media jobs. And then what happened? They all got laid off. So that the supposed justification for giving Bell all this money was that it was going to save media jobs. Well, they all got fired. So I guess that wasn't the real reason for giving tax dollars to the media. The real reason was for him to buy support from the media, which is what it actually did. So we believe that media should be driven by readership, viewership, and listenership, and that's what allows it to represent the Canadian people rather than taking marching orders from the PMO.
There you go. Our viewership, any revenue that comes into Northern Perspective, it lives and dies by the quality of our content. The end. If we don't produce good stuff, then people aren't going to watch and listen. And you know what? That's fair. That's completely fair. And we have a heck of a lot of people to compete with. And we do our best. And you know what? If people choose to watch us, great. If people choose not to watch us, great. And if we see that we're having some issues with views, we're going to look introspectively and say, okay, what can we do differently? What do people want to see? And then we do our research, and then we take another crack at the can. But these media agencies are just saying, oh, well, people aren't automatically watching us, so that's a problem. Give us money.
Well, the problem with the mainstream media, or I should say one of many problems with mainstream media, is that they have a narrative first and foremost, and that's the top concern of theirs. So our narrative is to push Trudeau good, Pierre Poilievre bad, for example. And then they say, how do I fit what's happening right now into that narrative?
And if it doesn't fit, then it doesn't go in.
Right. Whereas Northern Perspective, we go, okay, what's the truth? Now you wonder why people are running away from mainstream media, because people don't trust mainstream media. Mainstream media might give them the quote unquote truth, except, this has been stripped out and this has been rearranged and we conveniently left out this detail and we're only telling one side of the story. People don't want to be lied to.
By anybody, whether it's the mainstream media or independent media. So we're constantly trying to fill in the gaps of all of these pieces that people are missing. So either the mainstream media is deliberately not putting it in or mistakenly not putting it in, or other people are deliberately not putting it in or mistakenly not putting it in. But that's not the way journalism is supposed to work. And we're not even journalists, and we understand this. Right? The only narrative in journalism should be the truth. So what doesn't fit into that narrative? Anything that isn't the truth. And it doesn't matter if it looks bad. It doesn't matter if it's uncomfortable. It needs to go in there.
Well, and that's it. It doesn't matter if it makes, quote unquote, your guy look bad. The truth is the truth.
Do you believe that the civil service should be able to do more of its own IT work? And if that's the case, when you're Prime Minister, how will you make that happen, given that you're looking at cuts?
The answer is yes, and we'll make it happen because we're going to cut back on the outside consultants. So these two things are not in opposition. They are in concurrence. We want to cut back on outside consultants because public servants do the work more accountably and they do it more affordably. We know that because public servants don't cost $1,090 a day. They cost significantly less than that. So we're going to save money by reversing Trudeau's doubling of outside consulting fees. Thank you.
The Auditor General found that the civil service didn't have the skills to do this kind of work. So wouldn't you need to train them, and wouldn't that cost money,
Like
sir?
Phoenix. That didn't go so well.
But there were contractors involved in Phoenix as well.
Sir, I'd like to understand what you will do when you are Prime Minister, sir. The Auditor General found that the civil service didn't have these skills.
Why is it the public service doesn't have these skills? It's insane. We've increased the size of the public service by 50% under Justin Trudeau. And none of those 100,000 extra people have the skills to design an app that a couple of IT workers separately and as a joke designed in a single weekend. How is it possible that a couple of guys got a stack of pizza boxes and a case of beer and as a joke redesigned the ArriveCAN app from scratch in a weekend? And yet the 100,000 public servants Trudeau hired cannot do the very same thing. That points to the fact that he is an incompetent Prime Minister who is wasting our money. He's not worth the cost.
Last question.
Civil service,
The
sir.
Auditor General on the issue of the police investigation, she says in the report that the parts that are already under internal investigation, either by the CBSA or the RCMP, she didn't want to interfere in that, so she didn't go down that road. Are you concerned that that's missing from today's report?
I am, yes, very much so. And that might be one of the reasons why the Auditor General didn't use the same language as I did, is because certain parts of the scandal are not covered in this audit. We need the police to get to the bottom of it. I know that there are certain parts of this that are already under police investigation, and we want the truth to come out, and we want the police's findings to be complete and public so that Canadians know about all the corruption and mismanagement in the Trudeau government.
Okay, so a couple things in there. Finally, a reporter asked a question related to the news that broke today. And it was, the first one was, when you're Prime Minister, it's funny she didn't say if, but when you're Prime Minister, how are you going to do this? How are you going to make it cheaper and and bring people inside? So he said, well, I don't see those two things in opposition. We're going to reduce the amount of outside contracts, which are now typically more expensive than doing it in-house. And then two, you hire people to actually do those jobs. Now think about this. If the average IT government person has an average salary of around $100,000, so that's a pretty good resource, you could have hired 600 people.
600 app developers, if you say their salary is $100,000 a year, 600 to make a $60 million app.
That's a large IT department for a large company.
Heck, I think my high school had fewer students.
So,
You know, like, that's a lot of people.
so you hire these people, not 600 of them, probably six app developers, and maybe a few other guys. Some architects, some interface design guys, and then you probably have guys in some of the other areas of the existing government that actually manage systems that ArriveCAN would have to connect to. So you're already paying those salaries on an annual basis anyway. And the other thing that the government should do is hire a few people to act as an internal staffing agency. What do? They evaluate the current skill set of the government for a project, and if they need people from outside, then they're the people who get it, and they don't get a cut. Wow, what a concept. So you're not paying two guys $11 million to literally just find people for you. It's absolutely asinine. The second part was around, are there concerns that the Auditor General didn't include some aspects of the investigation because it would interfere with other investigations? And he said, yes, there is. So it'll be interesting to see what that is, because again, we haven't seen the full report. We've just seen these clips and the Globe and Mail article. So it'll be interesting to see what happens at committee when we watch it for the first time tonight, as well as tomorrow, because there's another 2-hour hearing tomorrow. But yeah, this is crazy, folks. Absolutely crazy. But make no mistake, this is going to be a bad week for the Liberals, man. Like, this started on Monday morning, so question period is going to happen shortly, and the Conservatives are going to be all over them about this. And it'll be very interesting to see what the NDP do in response, because this is now exploded. There's now documented evidence from the Auditor General, that's independent arm of the government, that says this went south. So the NDP, if I'm them, you got to start distancing yourself from this, man.
Like, right quick.
Right quick. Because otherwise, if you don't, now you're viewed as supporting corruption, and the Conservatives are going to be watching very carefully for that. Let me tell you. And the Bloc are going to have to do the same thing. They're going to be having to push the chair a little backwards, because the Liberals either dive into this and say, let's expose everything, or they continue to try and cover it up.
I think we know which one they're going to do.
Yeah. But either way, Justin Trudeau is not going to be sleeping well tonight. I guarantee you that.